Hey there, I'm Leisha Grabinski, the host of This is Saskatchewan. Do us a favor and hit follow on your favorite podcast app. We're on Spotify and Apple, and I promise it will only take a second. The more followers we have, the more likely it is that other people will find this podcast. Plus, you'll know right away when a new episode drops, and we have some really compelling stories in the works that you won't want to miss. Please know we appreciate you doing this. Okay. Let's get to it. I'm standing in a vacant lot in Saskatoon where the city will be opening a homeless shelter, 107 31st Street East. Just across from me is Harry Bailey Pool. It's under renovation right now, but it's usually a really busy spot with a lot of kids and people arriving as early as 6 a.m. to swim. Not far are two schools. I can also hear traffic from Idlewild Drive. Across that busy street is the neighbourhood Caswell Hill. It's a pretty diverse neighbourhood with a lot of working class people. Now the shelter that will be opened here, where I'm standing, will have 60 beds. It will be run by the Mustard Seed, which is a Christian nonprofit. People can have 3 hot meals, they can access services, and they'll be able to sleep until they find a more permanent place to live. It's different from a drop-in center where people might go for a bit just to warm up. The need for this kind of shelter is huge, but there's also a fair amount of worry about how it could change the neighborhood. Ty Johnston lives pretty close by. He's the communications coordinator for the Caswell Hill Community Association. He's fielding calls from all sorts of folks, and he says people are worried about what trouble might spill out from the shelter.
All these fears are valid, and I think and I don't want to downplay them when we're talking about how does this work positively. They're completely valid concerns.
Yeah,
our neighborhood historically has been bad, rough, sketchy, and I've really seen it blossom and bloom in the last few years. And a lot of folks are like, "Oh my God, we just got good again," and it feels like we're kind of being penalized. And also, I think that I will say, the people of Caswell, in my opinion, from the folks that I interact with, I feel like they do have a lot of like love, and we think that like love grows in our neighborhood. But it's got to be love for the people who are housed and unhoused at the same time.
Johnston says they've been inviting people to community association meetings to express their concerns. He says that's a better forum than Facebook. And each conversation reveals a lot.
It's kind of a mixed emotions thing, even from some members of the community are on one side and somewhere on the other. But most people I speak to have both inside of them. They're mixed on this. And I think everyone kind of agrees that a shelter is a Band-Aid. And we can talk about where the Band-Aid goes and how big it is and when do we rip it off. But the end of these conversations with these folks, I think a lot of them, and myself, this might sound calloused, I wish we didn't have a shelter in our neighborhood because I wish that we didn't have any shelters.
Days after I spoke to Johnston, people from the neighborhood gathered at City Hall. Person after person stood up to share their perspective.
I'm worried that if people don't have outdoor space close to the shelter, that they're going to start moving through the neighborhoods and using the school playgrounds, seeing as the Mustard Seed won't let them use substances on their property.
Don't you think the goal of a shelter should actually be to serve 0 people? We want to solve homelessness, not serve it. And we have created an entire business around homelessness and an economic ecosystem that supports homelessness.
The meeting also included officials from the city.
We ended up with this site because it meets most of our criteria. It doesn't have a building on it right now, but it is zoned appropriately for this.
We'll have security cameras inside and outside of the building and continue our practice of having 3 safety assessments for individuals coming into the shelter.
The community association does have some thoughts on how to have a positive relationship with people who use the shelter and staff. One idea is to draft a good neighbor agreement,
which is basically a non-legally binding agreement that outlines basically expectations from both parties, and it kind of outlines what happens when we have to escalate this thing, when somebody's yelling, when I see somebody smoking something, what do I do?
These questions are being asked in neighborhoods across the province. Drive down Highway 11 from Saskatoon to Regina to the neighborhood that surrounds the city's oldest cathedral. The church, with its large spires and stained glass windows, is at the center of the Cathedral neighborhood. It's filled with character homes and a mix of incomes. There are cute shops selling everything from coffee to plants. It's often bustling with people who like to be outside, walking to get groceries. People frequently bump into neighbors as they go. But since November, there's been rising tension in this part of the city. The YWCA opened a new shelter for women and children on 12th Avenue. The CBC's Adam Hunter has been following this story. You usually hear Adam on Fridays on the podcast when we talk about provincial politics. But this time, it's a civic matter that's been bubbling to the surface. Hey, Adam.
Hi, Alicia.
So does that story of Caswell Hill sound familiar to you?
Yes, it's playing out in Regina. The only difference, and it's a major difference, is that the shelter in Regina is already open. So we've had a few months to learn what it's like to live next to it, to live around it, as you mentioned. I had the chance to sit down with our colleague, Jenny Whitfield, and Jenny spent a lot of time speaking to people both inside the YWCA and who live outside and around in that neighborhood in Cathedral. And she tried to find out what the points of tension are. And this is a place that took years of planning, and it cost $70 million.
It's a beautiful building. It's light-filled. It's sunny, obviously brand new still. It's got a coffee shop and a little secondhand store. They've got daycare in there, child care center, outreach services, and of course shelter spaces for women and children fleeing domestic violence. And those are both emergency and transitional spaces. And we know that's important so that women don't just leave an emergency shelter and are left without a home or contemplating going back to an unstable situation. And while I was visiting the YWCA, I met Liza Channel, who was leaving what she called a bad situation in January, and she called a number of shelters before she connected with the YWCA.
They help with everything. They found me housing. When I got here, I had nothing. And the Encore clothing store, I've gotten clothes there. They give you a family or a clothing allowance. They took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. Like when I first got here, I couldn't process. I couldn't read. I couldn't. I was terrified of everything. I was able to. The workers read my emails to me. They helped me be able to keep up on things, and all of those small successes help you feel capable again.
And as you mentioned, it was a major project, $70 million that was covered by the city, the province, and the federal government. But even before that facility opened, there were concerns about what that site location might mean for the residents.
So explain that. What do you mean by that?
Well, the YWCA was previously offering those services downtown, and there were Cathedral residents that expressed concern that the things they observed outside of that YWCA location, people hanging out, people without homes sleeping outside or in the area, or intoxicated, using drugs, that these might be issues that were brought to their residential neighborhood. So before that facility did open, there were meetings that the neighborhood association hosted to address those concerns. And now, 10 months down the road, the neighbors say the things they were worried about happening in their neighborhood are now happening. And I stopped by on a weekday evening earlier this summer, and I stopped by to chat to a group of about 10 neighbors who were gathered on a stoop, and I wanted to understand their concerns, what were they seeing. And they expressed support for the YWCA's mission and cause, but they also shared a few of the reasons why they're frustrated.
Since the YWCA's gone up, probably the drugs being left around. I just found one 2 doors down from my house here, a spoonful of some blue substance and used needle, and it was either meth or something that we found out called blue heroin, which is heroin and fentanyl. I called the police. They did not respond. One of the neighbors from several doors down came with some oven mitts and a bag and disposed of it the best way he thought possible.
So we're being threatened. There's people smoking crack, smoking meth in front of our properties. Families can't get inside. Kids are scared when they're asked to move. Weapons are being pulled out. They're allowing people to wave weapons around on their property all night long. They're allowing intoxicated people to yell and scream all night long. They're allowing fights to happen outside. They're allowing bathroom usage outside. It's happening on our properties. There's fires being started. The fire department was called out. Kids are scared to sleep at night. And I let a lot of things slide because I don't want to use up services that are needed. And the police are quick to respond usually. They're really good. Prior to the Y moving in here, never. Not once in 10 years did I call the police ever.
Well, there's this one specific resident who would stand out the resident doors and she'd yell and scream and swear. And I have my own mental health issues. I deal with PTSD and anxiety. And so she was, like, the yelling and screaming was really setting me off. And so, like, we'd call over there and, like, ask them, please, can you go and talk to her? Like, can you do something about this? And it was every day for a while. It was multiple times a day for a while. And, you know, they'd say, like, oh, she's not violent. It's like, it doesn't matter that she's not physically violent. She's, like, causing me real distress. The Cathedral area was always a safe, nice neighborhood. It was the specific reason why I wanted to buy a house here was because I loved the Cathedral area. And now this area is not what it was even just a few years ago.
So you can hear, Adam, there's a lot of different things that
frustration,
they're
right? Yeah,
right. That's, I think, the main emotion you might take away from that. And one of the things I heard from them as part of that frustration is that they feel they can't express what they're thinking or feeling openly, that they're just being dismissed as NIMBY, and you've heard that acronym that stands for Not in My Backyard. And they say, yeah, okay, well, I don't want some of these things in my background. There are people that use the Y services that have complex needs and health issues, and some of that is definitely spilling over to the area. Is seen that they mentioned in the area, and that they don't want to see some of that issues, and that they feel like that there are other neighbors who are dismissing them like that. If you go on the Regina Cathedral neighborhood Facebook page, there's a lot of back and forth from people who are saying you need to be more compassionate. These are people with issues and needs. They're like, that's fine. We understand that. We understand they have needs, but nobody is hearing us, and they feel like that they are not being heard by the leadership at the YWCA either.
So what was your sense of how safe the neighborhood felt when you were walking around there?
When I was there, it was a fairly quiet weekend evening. There were these neighbors gathered on one stoop, and right outside the YWCA, there were people gathered who were just sitting and talking. And I said to the neighbors, it seems pretty peaceful. And they told me, oh, it's not always like this. And then just moments later, someone across the street did sit down and start smoking from a pipe. I don't know what they were smoking, but they were, it was one of the issues that they had flagged. And then these neighbors showed me videos and photos of things like people fighting, and a woman who was using something that appeared to be a crack pipe. And I was really curious to talk to the people who are drawn to that location specifically because of the YWCA. So when I saw a woman walking down the street who exchanged greetings with the people on the benches at the YWCA, I ran down to talk to her. Her name is Regina Bernard, and she said she regularly uses the YWCA for outreach and counseling. She told me she's had past addiction issues, and she still lives in the area. So she is a supporter of the YWCA's cause, but she also understands where the neighbors are coming from.
Trauma is the gateway to using drugs to escape, or alcohol, right? I used to use alcohol to escape. So, we don't make sense when we're in active addiction. So, of course, it's going to disrupt the peace of the community, or they might not be used to what's going on. So I can understand both sides.
So that's an interesting perspective as well, Jenny. We're waiting to hear from one other group in this, and that's the YWCA.
Absolutely.
So what have they said?
Yeah, I did sit down with CEO Melissa Coomer-Betson, and she acknowledges there have been some new issues that have cropped up with the new building. Of course, before it even opened, there were months and months of construction, and that was fairly noisy for the people living there. And then there have been fire alarms going out while they work out bugs from that new facility. While I was there was a fire alarm that kind of went off, and sometimes that happens in the night or early morning. And there's a lack of parking for residents at times as well when they've got activities and things going on. She says she understands those issues would be frustrating for residents, but she said she also used to live in that general area beforehand, before the Y even opened there, and she has seen how drugs and mental health issues have long been issues even before they located there.
I think a lot of people fear what they don't understand or they don't know. And so gathering of people who potentially may not look like them, who may have, all of their belongings in a shopping cart, who may, not necessarily behave in a way that one assumes one behaves when they're sitting on a park bench. I think there's a lot of fear in that unknown piece. And so sometimes it's really difficult to determine, is this fear or is this actual danger?
One of the things she feels the YWCA has been able to give to the neighborhood is a better understanding of people that are facing trauma. You heard one of the people earlier, one of the neighborhood residents talking about somebody who's having a mental health crisis outside. Well, Melissa gave me that as an example of this resident who sometimes has crisis and can behave erratically. And some neighbors, she said, came and said, well, what's going on with this? How do we help? And the staff told them to say this woman's name, which can help break her out of that crisis moment.
With knowledge comes a sense of connection. I think that I've seen many examples of that over the last 9 months that our women have lived here. And I think that those are the beautiful moments of being able to be part of a neighborhood.
So we have a couple of very different perspectives here that you've shown us. Do you have a sense of how these neighbors' concerns may be resolved? Is there any get-together in the future?
Yeah, it's clearly not easy. I think that everybody has a different perspective here. And I think everyone I spoke to agrees that we need addiction and mental health services and shelter services in our city and, across probably the country. And where to deliver those services, we've seen it. It's always a source of contention, or can generally be a questions around that. But in the interest of bringing together people to figure out how to create a safer and healthier neighborhood, that is work that's ongoing. The local community association has plans to host a meeting, and they want to bring together the YWCA and some of those concerned neighbors to figure out how they may work collectively to that cause.
So how can people in a neighborhood work through this? Erin Day hears these sorts of debates all the time. She's an associate professor in the Department of Criminology at Wilfrid Laurier University. She's been doing research on homelessness for the past 15 years and focuses on mid-sized cities just like Regina and Saskatoon.
It's absolutely happening all over Canada. I've been doing this work from coast to coast, and communities across the country are feeling this. And what I'm really hearing was people not feeling heard, and what a difference it can make when people feel heard, when their concerns and fears are validated and addressed, and then moving proactively. This is what we need as we try to build a community. Not yes, but not in my backyard. Yes, but anywhere else. It's okay, if this is going to be in my backyard, how do we do this in a way that works for everybody? That's the right approach.
I think I want to ask you, though, the question, can you express concerns without automatically being accused of NIMBYism? I think that's, that was kind of the starting point. Okay, if people want to express their concerns, are they going to be accused of, you just don't want it in your backyard?
I think that's a reflection of what's actually been happening for, I would say the last decade, is there has been a lot of weaponizing of concerns like parking, like neighborhood aesthetics, things like that, as a way of pushing out any services that provide supports to unhoused people, no matter what. We call it banana. It's build absolutely nothing anywhere at any time. And so it's this idea that they'll do anything to make it not happen. And so I think that's what's happening. And so then there's an automatic reflex when what I think of as valid and legitimate concerns are addressed, it gets lumped into that, for lack of a better word, banana bucket.
So how can you address people's concerns in a way that has them feeling heard, but also doesn't? I'm just wondering what supports a community needs so that they aren't dealing with people smoking drugs across the street from the shelter. I mean, and cities are dealing with this in all neighborhoods. I'm not suggesting that it will only happen there, but what do you say to someone who's like, but I don't want that happening in my neighborhood?
And it's fair to not want it to happen in your neighborhood. The people who that they're describing, that they're worried about, don't want it to happen either. Nobody wants to be out on the middle of the street having an episode. Nobody wants to be addicted to substances. And if they are using substances, nobody wants to use it out in public. Like it's there's a shame that comes with this. And I've met lots of folks who will say, I want to be a good neighbor. I know people in encampments who tidy up their encampment and try to do everything they can to be a good neighbor. And I know people who've been that person screaming in the middle of the street one day and the next day feeling incredibly embarrassed and incredibly ashamed. But it was the difficult moment they were in.
I wrote down a quote from someone in Jenny's story: "We don't make sense when we're in active addiction." I wrote that down because I thought that was pretty poignant. Do you have a story in your neighborhood that you want heard? We could make a podcast episode about an issue that matters to you. Email thisissk@cbc.ca. Thanks to Adam Hunter, who you will hear Friday on our political panel. Also thanks to Nicole Huck, Scott Larson, and Jenny Whitfield. Technical support from Chris Haynes. I'm Leisha Grabinski. We'll talk to you next week.